There are wounds that don't bleed, wounds that no one can see, wounds that don't show up on a scan or don't make noise or even leave bruises. But these are the wounds that can change everything. These are the wounds of not being met, not being felt, and not being known. These are subtle wounds. They're quiet and they're very easy to miss, especially when you grow up in a world that praises self-sufficiency and punishes emotional honesty. You might have learned early that for your tears, they actually make people uncomfortable, right? That your anger got you sent to your room, and that your joy was too much in expression, and your sadness was too dramatic, and your curiosity was too intense. And so over time, you just adjusted, and you got quieter, and you got smaller, and more agreeable, and you got more independent. And you didn't stop feeling, you just, you stopped showing it. Because what was the point? No one, no one knew how to meet you where you were. No one said, hey, I see you and I feel that too. No one would mirror emotional responses back to you in a way that felt safe. And no one, I guess, made you believe that your experience was real or valid or worthy of even being tended to. And without that mirroring, without that attunement, you began to internalize a dangerous idea that maybe the problem really is me. And that's where the damage began. Not with what you felt, but with how it was received. Or more often, how it was not received, right? This is what so many of us carry without ever realizing it. It's not trauma in the traditional sense per se, but it's a misattunement, 1,000 moments of subtle emotional absence coming to bear. Not outright rejection, but more so a failure to be emotionally met with care and curiosity. And over time, those moments formed a story that whispers, you are too much. You're hard to love. And you always need something. And you better fix it yourself before anyone can care for you. And so you begin the long, exhausting journey of trying to become lovable. You became helpful in the process, or you became successful, or funny, or quiet. You were easygoing, and you were low maintenance, and you learned to offer connection without asking for it back. You learned to listen without expecting to be heard. And you learned to give comfort while ignoring your own hunger for the same in return. And you get praised for all of that. People would call you resilient. They would call you grounded. And they would say, you're so well put together, right? But inside, you're starving because all the praise, it wasn't meeting the need that never got met. The need that wanted to be seen and acknowledged. Not for what you do, but for who you are. And this is where the lie takes hold. And this is where you start to believe that if I'm still not being loved, even when I'm doing everything for everyone in the way that seems right, then I must be broken. But you're not. You're not broken. You're just unmet. And that's the distinction that changes this whole perception. Because if you're broken, you need fixing, right? If you need to hustle for worthiness, then you need to earn your way back to love. But if you're unmet, then you you simply need care, right? And you need presence, and you need attunement, or you need healing. You need what you always needed, and that was just, in a way, the thing that actually reaches you. And here's a radical truth, and that's that healing doesn't come from more doing in life. It comes instead from feeling a lot more, from acknowledging the grief of what you didn't get, right? Or from naming the loneliness that still lives in your body, or from releasing the shame that was never yours to carry. It means pausing the performance just long enough to ask, what part of me was never seen? Maybe it was a part of you that felt the really big emotions, the intimidating emotions. Perhaps it was a part that was asked too many times questions, right? That hit the spot. Maybe it was the sensitive part, the scared part, the part that just wanted to be held. These parts did not go away. They just went underground, and they've been waiting quietly and patiently for you to stop blaming them, because they are not the reason you were left unmet. The reason is simpler and perhaps even sadder, and that is no one in your world knew how to meet you there. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Perhaps they were emotionally shut down within themselves. And maybe they were just too consumed by their own pain to offer presence that you deserved. Whatever the cause was, it wasn't about your worth. It was about their capacity. And here's the healing opportunity. You get to reclaim parts of you that were never met. You get to see them now. You get to highlight and bring attention to them in a way. You get to say, you're not too much. You were just too alone with it. And doing that, you begin to shift, and you stop over functioning, and you stop proving, right? And you stop shrinking to stay safe. And you stop earning what was always supposed to be offered freely. And that's love and safety and emotional presence, because you were never broken. You were just waiting to be met. Now, what does it mean to be met in the right way? It means that someone doesn't just hear the words you're saying, they also feel the tone beneath them. They don't rush to fix you. Um, they don't minimize your pain. They don't necessarily redirect the conversation back to themselves. They just stay gently, with curiosity and with presence. And they say things like, I get why that would hurt, or that makes sense to me, or you don't have to explain, I'm here, or I can see how much you are carrying there. And being met in the right way is not about being given advice. It's about being given one's presence. And for many of us, that never happened, right? We learned to edit our emotions and to tone down ourselves so that we were palpable for others, and to appear fine or calm or grateful or unaffected. Not because we were fake, but because we were afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being too intense for these individuals, afraid of watching someone's eyes sort of glaze over when we finally told the truth. And so we adapted, and we got quieter, and we became excellent at holding space for others while holding nothing for ourselves. But that unmet pain does not vanish. It's waiting. It waits in the body. in the nervous system, if you will. And it waits in the subtle moments of disconnection that trigger a disproportionate reaction. And you know those moments, right? Those moments when someone doesn't text back and then you feel abandoned. Or when someone says, oh, you're too sensitive, and it hits you like a knife. When you give everything to a relationship and you still feel invisible. These aren't signs of brokenness. They're signs of unprocessed and unmet needs that have been misinterpreted as personal defects. But let's be clear. Needing attunement does not make you needy. And wanting reassurance does not make you clingy. Or craving validation does not make you broken. It makes you human. The problem is, in a world that idolizes independence and emotional detachment, those human needs have been pathologized. And we call men weak for expressing grief. And we call women dramatic for needing to be heard. And we call kids attention seeking when they're really connection seeking. And we internalize these labels over time. And we start believing that needing anything at all is a liability. And so we start performing our okayness, and we say, I'm good, when we're unraveling. And we smile when we're quietly dissociating. We laugh off the wounds that we've never dared to name. And people reward us for all of this. They say, oh, you're so strong, right? Or you're so emotionally mature. Or have you ever got the one where they say, you're the stable one? Whereas inside, we're still hoping that someone just might ask us, but how are you really? Like, truly. And when they don't, we start to believe that question is too much to ask. And so we bury it, right? And that burial becomes like a pattern in life. We choose partners who don't emotionally engage. And we stay in friendships where depth is always just out of reach. And we enter work environments that praise our productivity but never ask about our well-being. And all the while we tell ourselves, this is just how it is. And I shouldn't be needing more. And maybe I'm just built wrong. But you're not. You're not too much. You're just emotionally underfed. And you've been surviving on crumbs of connection for so long. And you're wondering why you still feel empty. That emptiness is not proof of failure. No, it's a signal, right? A messenger, a flare from the parts of you that were never met. So how do you respond? How do you respond to this? You don't silence it. You don't want to shame this. No, you instead want to turn toward it. You want to start by naming what you never got to name before. Maybe it sounds like this. It sounds like, I needed someone to hold space for me, and no one did in this instance. Or I didn't get the kind of comfort I needed as a kid when I went through this. Or I learned to make myself easy so I wouldn't be left behind. Or I thought I was kind enough, or quiet enough, or helpful enough. I thought if I was all these, I'd be loved. You see, these truths are not indictments of your past. These are invitations into your present. Because once you are able to name what went unmet, then you can actually begin to meet it now. You can become the safe presence that you never received once upon a time. You can surround yourself with people who feel like emotional nourishment and not performance reviewers. And you can start to build relationships that honor your wholeness and not just your usefulness. This is not self-pity. This is a return to self. It's a reclamation of the emotional real estate that you gave away just so you could survive. And yes, it's vulnerable. And yes, you will likely cry or grieve your way through this. And that grief needs space to be experienced and felt. You may even rage at the years that you lost trying to become more acceptable. But after that expression of grief, usually comes clarity, the clarity that you were never broken, the clarity that love was always supposed to feel safe, that the clarity that your softness is not a flaw, it's a signal of what was never witnessed. And once you accept that, it's then that you start to move differently. It's then that you stop chasing people who don't have the capacity to see you. It's then that you stop auditioning for love with others. And instead you stop apologizing for even needing to be held. Because now you know what it means to be met. And you'll never settle for less, right? So many of us grew up trying to earn this kind of connection that should have been really offered freely. We learned to be performers and peacemakers and over-functioners. It wasn't because we wanted to manipulate, but it's because we were desperate to belong. So we watched which parts of us got praised and which ones got punished. And we shaped ourselves accordingly. And we began to believe that the only way to be loved was to become less ourselves. And now, years later, the cost is showing up. And we're tired, emotionally exhausted, overcommitted most likely, and under-supported while overcommitted. And we're in relationships where we give and we give and we give, but still feel like a mystery to the people that are closest to us. Because it's hard to feel loved when you've never felt met. And you can be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly alone. If none of those people actually see the patterns of you that matter the most, that deepens that sense of loneliness, the scared part, the grieving part, right? It's the hopeful part that is included there too, the part that still wishes that someone would say, hey, you don't have to do anything. I'm just glad that you're here. I'm glad that you exist in my space. Instead, we get complimented for our capacity, and we get rewarded for our independence. And we get applauded for our stability. But what about our humanity? What about our need to be vulnerable and tender and to be held? What about the ability to cry without having to explain ourselves, or to feel without needing someone to fix us? That's what it means to be met in the right way. Not tolerated, not managed, not watched from a distance, but witnessed, seen, joined, and responded to. And here's the hard part. Sometimes, even the people who love us the most don't necessarily know how to meet us. They may be trying, but their emotional vocabulary is limited, right? Their capacity for presence is really thin. Their own stories of being unmet are still unresolved for them, right? So they offer what they know, and what that is oftentimes advice instead of empathy, or distraction instead of depth. Look on the bright side, they'll say, instead of saying, oh, tell me more. And while their intentions may be kind, their presence still doesn't land. It doesn't reach the wound. And the wound which is still raw after all these years, starts to whisper again, saying, see, you are too much. See, no one can hold you. See, you'll always have to do this alone. But that's not the truth. That's more the trauma that is echoing there. And we don't heal trauma echoes by staying silent. We heal them by responding differently, right? By daring to speak what we've never said. By staying in the room when vulnerability feels dangerous. By choosing people who show up differently and not perfectly, but presently. And by doing something that many of us were never taught how to do, and that is by meeting ourselves. Because the most powerful repair begins not with others, but with you. You can become the presence that you never had. You can stop gaslighting your own feelings. You can stop shaming your own softness, and you can stop performing like that you're okay just so you can make others feel comfortable. Instead, you can ask, what do I need right now, right? Or what does the younger version of myself still long to hear? Or what would it look like to stop abandoning myself? These questions shift and change the way your perception begins to operate, because they start building a new internal culture within. One where needs are allowed and celebrated and given space and explored with curiosity, where emotions are welcome, where vulnerability and tenderness is not treated as an inconvenience. And from this internal safety that you're cultivating and preparing, your external world also begins to shift, and you start choosing relationships that honor your truth. You stop apologizing for your emotional reality, because now you can create boundaries that protect your softness instead of walls that shut her down, right? And here's the beautiful irony in all this. The more that you're willing to meet yourself, the more that others are willing to learn how to also meet you as yourself. Because when you stop pretending, you're giving people a chance to respond to the real you. Not the fake or curated or polished version of you. Not the helpful one that always served and did for others. Not the strong one that always held a boat but never for yourself. But the one who still aches and feels and hopes. The one who still needs and expresses. And while not everyone will meet you here, right? The right ones, they're going to find their way to you. They'll resonate. They'll say, there's my people. And you'll know the difference, because their presence will feel like exhaling, like coming back home again. It'll feel like hearing, maybe for the first time, that you were never too much, right? That you were just too alone. And now you're seen for you. And that they're not leaving because they like the real you. So what do we do now? Now that you see that it wasn't your fault, now that you've named the ache and the pain, now that you've realized that the story of being too much was never yours to carry, what do we do now? Now we begin to rewrite our story, not with perfection, no, not with certainty either. That's tempting. But instead with presence, right? We start noticing the way our body tenses when someone asks how you're doing, for example. That's a really good hint. The way that you say, I'm fine, instantaneously before you even check in with yourself. Or the way that you shrink in conversations when vulnerability is knocking at the door. And along the way, you start choosing different responses. You pause and you breathe. And then let yourself feel the moment before you flee it. And then maybe, just maybe, you say something you've never said before. Something like, I don't know how to talk about this, but I want to try, for example, right? Or this hurts more than I expected it to. Or I'm not used to this kind of honesty, but I'd like to be, right? Or I always felt like I had to figure it out alone, but I don't want to do that anymore. These again are not weak confessions. These are acts of reclamation that are courageous, and they reclaim your right to be soft and your right to be uncertain, your right to be imperfect and messy, your right to be in the process. And they also reclaim the story that was taken away from you, the story where you are lovable, not because you hide your needs, but because you're courageous enough to voice them. You were never meant to go through this alone. You were never meant to feel unsafe in your own heart. You were never meant to become the caretaker of everyone else and their emotions while abandoning your own. Instead, you were meant to be met. You were meant to be met fully and tenderly and repeatedly. And the fact that it didn't happen back then, that's grief, not proof. It's grief for what you didn't get, but not proof that you didn't deserve it. So take a pause and grieve it. Grieve the moments when you were silenced. Grieve the times when you were misunderstood. Grieve the relationships where you brought your truth and where instead you were met with indifference. Grieve the younger version of you who's hoping that someone might see past the performance. And then offer that younger self something new. Offer that younger version of yourself compassion. Offer it space. Offer it protection. Offer it curiosity. And sit with that younger version of you. Ask them, what did they need? Ask them what they never got to say that they wish they could have. Ask them what kind of love was reaching for them in all those silent moments. And then remind that younger version of you that we're not doing it that way anymore, that we're not shrinking anymore. We're done with pretending, right? We're not begging to be chosen by people who don't have the capacity or the eyes to see us. Because now we see us. And that is where the real healing begins. It's not with someone else finally showing up for you, but it's you showing up with yourself in a way that no one ever taught you how to do. That self-meeting becomes the foundation for everything else. It's from here that you start practicing relationships that are different, right? Ones where you're able to say what you mean, even if your voice is shaky through the process. It's where you take up emotional space, even if it feels unfamiliar. It's where you choose people who don't need you to be easy in order for them to love you. And you're going to start recognizing the ones who meet you with presence instead of pressure. You'll recognize these ones who respond, not just react to you. These are the ones who don't shame your needs, but instead honor them. Because once you've been starved of emotional attunement, you become exquisitely sensitive to real nourishment when it does finally arrive. It feels like this warmth, right? It feels like breathing. It feels like something in your chest finally unclenching. And when it does, you won't need to chase it anymore. You'll learn how to receive it. Because now you believe that you are worthy of this and all that you didn't have. Not because you've earned it, but because you are human. And being human, it means needing to be seen. It means needing to be felt. It means needing to be met in the right way. So this is not weakness. Not at all. This is biology, I would say. This is connection. This is truth. And so if you've ever felt like you are broken, if you've spent years perhaps wondering why love doesn't stick, why loneliness seems to linger, why your body still flinches and at the reception of kindness, this is just a reminder. You weren't defective. You were just never mirrored. But now you can be. And now you can reclaim what you didn't experience all those years. Now you can soften. And now you can stop performing. And instead, you can start participating. And slowly, moment by moment, you'll begin to feel this. You'll begin to feel that you were never broken. You were just waiting to be met. You got this.